My mouth is big, but probably not that big. Good morning. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. It is so nice to see you all here this morning. Some of you still look a little dazed from too much turkey, but that's okay, that will pass. Our mission here at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Mary Jo Hennessy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer or a visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the New to Sunnyhill button to receive more information about our congregation and to receive our weekly newsletter called The Beat, which comes in your email every Wednesdays. That way you can know what is going on here in our congregation and sign up and join in. If you are new and would like to be greeted as a newcomer, please take a red mug during coffee and conversation. Members will line up orderly to seek you out and say hello. And for those of you joining online today, a warm welcome to you. Some of you may be still cuddled up in your warm and fuzzies with your cup of coffee, but it is so nice you're joining us. And please let us know you're here by saying hello on YouTube or Facebook. And a gentle reminder to you all here in the room, please silence those cell phones and any other electronic devices you have so we can enjoy the service and not be interrupted by buzzing or ringing. And also, our guest minister used to have a rule that if your cell phone went on during his service, you owed him lunch. So, just saying. If you have a restless infant or toddler with you today, although I do not see any, well, if you are yourself, oh, there we go, we got one. You go, baby. Or if you are yourself feeling restless or, noisy, please, there is a infant, toddler, noisy adult room in the back. You can just go out through the center doors and make a left. You can see and hear the service and shout to your heart's delight, and you will not disturb anyone. And some of you may be wondering who this dashing Southern gentleman is who is seated behind me. Many of you know the Reverend Dr. J. Abernathy, and for those of you who do not, well, you are in for a treat. Dr. J. Abernathy served as our interim minister from 2010 through 2014. Jay and his wife, Eileen, who is also here with us, have retired and moved to Greensboro, North Carolina. We are very happy to have them here today. And I feel this little one-sentence introduction of Jay being an interim minister from 2010 to 2014 is a little short on magnitude of impact. The room we are seated in here today, Jay helped us get here, and we are forever grateful. He may smack me for that later. I don't know. We'll find out. Our opening words, which we will say in unison, were written by Jay Abernathy. Together, please. We affirm the beauty of nature and all the universe. We affirm the closeness of love of the human family. We affirm the joy of work and play, of living. Even amidst instances of chaos and evil, we choose mercy, joy, and love. And if you can join me in the words for lighting our chalice. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our ways.
Morning. Please rise and body your spirit to join in singing our opening hymn, As We Come Marching, Marching. Please be seated.
Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating as well as the things that we are mourning, so that they do not need to be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from our website. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." A sorrow was submitted by Louis Portela. Louis says, wishes peace and love to his biological family upon the loss of cousin David. To Louis and his family, we say, "We hold you in our hearts." And Louis also shared a joy. Louis is eternally grateful for all the love and support our Sunnyhill community has freely given him, from rides, meals, and just someone to talk with during all the recent upsets in life. He thanks everyone and has to say that Sunnyhill absolutely rocks. To Louis, we say, "We hold you in our hearts." A couple readings to share. This reading comes from A Unitarian States His Case by Reverend Robert W. Sonnen. There are always people who have all the answers to all the questions. Even as nature abhors a vacuum, so humanity hates a mystery. People want to know. They have questions and they want answers. Many times they are not too concerned with the reason for these answers. Many times they do not trouble themselves with such details as evidence or proof. What they want mainly is to be told. For the sake of their own peace of mind, there must be no question marks. Life, for them, is not a great unfinished mosaic, but rather a neat little jigsaw puzzle that can be put together in one evening with no pieces missing. Our second reading is from The Medusa and the Snail by Lewis Thomas. We have evolved scientists, and so we know a lot about DNA. But if our kind of mind had been confronted with the problem of designing a similar replicating molecule as in the first single-cell creatures, we'd never have succeeded. We would have made one fatal mistake. Our molecule would have been perfect. The capacity to blunder slightly is the real marvel of DNA. Without this special attribute, we would still be anaerobic bacteria, and there would be no music.
Bob Sonnen gave that sermon about jigsaw puzzles and such in 1949 to the church at Wellesley Hills, Massachusetts. I invite you to join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Following the spoken words, there will be a moment of silence, and then we have a musical response. Is that good? Old habits die hard. I always like to pause for a second after trying to convince you to pray. First, I invite you to recall members of this congregation who are in pain and sorrow, grief, or anxiety. We also recall those damaged by the recent spate of mass murders and all the gun violence and hate-inspired vengeance in our society. We recall those recovering from the damages of climate change. In this special moment of the service, we weave through the tiniest strands of bacteria and the large and complicated yarn of the larger mammals, the whole cloth of life on our planet. Throughout our lives, we are connected with all of creation, let us comfortably settle ourselves into this world, admit our deficiencies, and allow the remainder of life and the vast and animate matter surrounding us to play their roles. For shining through the living and dying are the bright, glowing works of individuals dedicated to all nature's rocks and seas, flowers and trees, to all animals big and small, and most especially to all people, our brothers and sisters, howsoever they distinguish themselves from us. We feel that kinship which is our birthright, which unites us with nature, all humanity, and the great world of tomorrow. Ours is the master craftsman's opportunity to lovingly mold the materials in life into a greater harmony. We take a few moments and feel yourselves a part of this larger world. Amen.
Buddy's going to play this once through, and then I invite you to sing along with me.
Sounding with the dawn to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night.
It's just like Lewis Thomas to give us a kick in the pants. The biologist tells us that without imperfection in the world, there would be no music. And I'm not so sure, given the choice of no world or no music, I'd probably choose no world. Your perfections, he tells us, are a vexation. And perfection is deadly. My father, for example, wasn't perfect, but he was so generous, forgiving, and hardworking that everyone easily forgave his faults. His life was definitely a blessing of imperfection to all who knew him, a great combination, mishmash of things. And I celebrated his birthday, his 90th birthday in 2012, from the pulpit of this congregation, with a sermon that began with a poem that poet E.E. Cummings wrote for his father, who was a Unitarian minister, of course. E.E. Cummings' poem, My Father Moved Through Dooms of Love, takes about 10 minutes to read, so I have shortened it a bit. There are 4 lines in the middle that go, joy was his song, and so pure a heart of star could by him steer. And pure so now, and now so yes, the wisp of twilight would rejoice. I have a little speech impediment with W's and R's, and I almost cut that line out because I hate risks. And a little later, well, at the end, he says, it's a wonderful poem about his father. It begins, my father moved through dooms of live, through seams of am, through halves of give, E. Cummings is tough, but if you read him a dozen times, it's really great. He ended with, I say, though hate were why men breathe, because my Father lived his soul, love is the whole and more than all. Because my Father lived his soul, love is the whole and more than all. For our life is more than all the mistakes and anxieties and enemies we encounter in the course of our daily life. My dad, for example, was an ardent Democrat and integrationist, born in North Alabama and lived most of his life in Middle Tennessee. And he sold lamps and interior furnishings throughout the South and managed to maintain business relationships and good, strong friendships with ardent followers of George Wallace. For my father was a breath of joy and openness in what people often experience as a cruel and senseless world. This sermon will be about imperfections on many levels, but it is always about my Father's lesson. Our imperfections must not keep us apart from one another. Our imperfections are not cosmic sins. They're built into who we are as human beings. Now, nobody is spiritually perfect. That's why we invented gods. Many people come a lot closer to being perfectly selfish. That's pretty much the opposite of being spiritual. Spiritual is a way of a positive understanding of our place in the wider universe, while selfish is basically of saying, I don't give a fig for anybody or anything but me. There is this universal law. Nobody and no thing is perfect. And while we're at it, no God is perfect either. Now, I am almost perfect. Certainly better than you, but my humility forbids me from stressing this point too much. But I have to admit that some of you are better at some things than I am. And in fact, it often comes to me that most of you are better at most things than I am. And I don't always need this lesson in humility. You can back off a little bit every now and again, you know. You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been proving this year that not all things are perfect. And it's true that the Steeler organization has never excelled in humility, but then they aren't religious, though a great many of folks in Pittsburgh worship them for some reason. When I say I'm not perfect, I'm saying I'm not God. I'm not in charge of the universe and all the rest of you, and it's a darn good thing. Selfish and arrogant folks are insulted by this. They think it's an insult to say, you're not perfect, and frankly, you're never going to be perfect. We humans, aren't the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, and all too often not even the smartest of creatures on this earth. And we need to start from a point of recognizing that. The first living thing on this planet, we are reliably told, were one-celled creatures. They had only one cell. And the first ones were very simple, though they began to get complicated. They reproduced themselves by splitting in half. And because they were so simple, each half was exactly like the other half. That's called cloning. Don't get old. That's called cloning. And both creatures are exactly alike. Now, occasionally this failed to work properly. And when the creature split in half, this one cell, the two cells were not exactly alike. And often one or both sides died. but occasionally both sides lived. And then when that little half that was different split, cloned itself, both were different. And suddenly we had not one kind of one-celled creature, but two kinds of one-celled creatures because of that little imperfection in the splitting. And after a few million years, we got complex one-celled animals that when they began to split, somehow in the confusion there ended up being completely different cells doing completely different things. And then they were so clumsy in their separation that they formed not two one-celled creatures, but one one-celled creature and one two-celled creature. And suddenly there were two-celled creatures, not just one-celled creatures. And after a while, there were four-celled creatures. And then another few millennia, it kept going, and we were on the way to creating human beings from those first one-celled creatures. Each of these and later steps required one special action: failure, imperfect cell production, or reproduction in this case. If the cell hadn't failed, we wouldn't be here and there wouldn't be any music. You see, the quest for perfection is not only a dead end, it is actually dangerous and fatal. As with the change from one-celled creatures to complex human beings, the physical universe depends on imperfections. And here's a nasty, nasty truth. Our mental universe also depends upon imperfections. Our minds, even our morals, depend upon imperfections. Otherwise, we'd be gods. And as I look out upon you, I only see a couple of candidates. So we're concerned with human blunders and spiritual matters, especially as a religion. And so here's a great story I told 7 or 8 or 9 years ago to this congregation, but there are a couple of new folks here. So here it goes. This is from G. Peter Fleck. It's a beautiful little story about his grandson Benjamin, who was born and spent his early years in a small university town in Iowa, where his parents were teachers and his neighbors were farmers. At the age of 4, reflecting his location, he created an imaginary farm. From time to time, he told his parents what was going on there, and one day he said to his mother, "Mom, you know what happened last night? Last night the vet came to our farm and he cut off a little piece of the cow's hoof, and now we have a calf." Well, it's the 70s. His mother was a liberal, and so she seized the opportunity to tell this little boy about how that really worked. "Benjamin," she said, "that is not the way it happens." And then she embarked on a long story about sperm and fertilization and how the embryo develops in the womb and how the little calf is finally born between the cow's legs. "You see, Benjamin," she said, "that's how it really happens." Whereupon her 4-year-old son looked her square in the eye and said, "Not on my farm." Now, it's important that her mother tries to explain things to her son, and it's equally important on occasion for her mother to recognize, well, maybe not everything. Regardless of our best intentions and insights and knowledge, you and I, and even mothers, cannot command people, decree what they are to believe or how they are to act, not even on a farm. We don't really know how to act ourselves a great deal of the time, and recognizing this is called humility, the essential spiritual insight. We also lack the power, the knowledge, and the sensitivity to require other people to do what we tell them to do or what is good for them, or what they should believe, even if they are only 4 years old. This is just as true about the abortion issue as it is about racial prejudice. If perfection is the goal, do we really want Trump or Biden or the next president or even the UUA to tell us what's perfect? Well, you've heard the now common saying, the cracks in the universe are where the light gets through. That's poetry, not science, of course. But there is an insight there about how we seem to experience inspiration. Creativity seems to come from outside us, to us. Might be better to say, though, that the light comes not from the gaps, but from the very structure of the universe. We might just as well say there are cracks in the universe, and they're gigantic. The spaces out there where there are nothing is mind-boggling. In our own brains, we might say there are cracks where knowledge breaks through and prejudice is denied. There are also gaps in our social and cultural prejudices, and tolerance and kindness and forgiveness break through. You see, here's the trouble with perfection. It assumes it is possible for people to be perfect in our world. Does anyone really believe in perfection in our world nowadays? Perfection was first used by Unitarians, really, not yet Universalists, for Unitarians as a contrast to sinners in the hands of an angry God. Jonathan Edwards' famous sermon reflecting the conservative Presbyterian feelings about the end of the Revolutionary War. And the Unitarians said, no, God's too nice for that, too kind for that. We human beings have possibilities, but we aren't perfect. So we develop this notion of character, which says we try to do our best. We try to improve, but we're humble enough to know that we're not going to be perfect. So we can all be better, more consistent, have greater integrity or greater honesty, more compassion and more forgiveness. But perfection, probably one bridge too far. We just can't get quite all the way there. So religion, in the entire history of humanity, and particularly liberal religion and our religious heritage, is about living with our imperfections. It's not about making things perfect. It's about making ourselves better and assuming that if we interact with our neighbors and making things better, everything will be better. But we're humble enough to know that we don't get to tell everybody else what's best. Strongly suggest, strongly urge, push, gripe and complain a little bit and get cranky and irritable. That's human nature, isn't it? But perfect, I don't think you get to complain to someone else because they don't agree with you if you think you're perfect. And it's just for this reason that forgiveness, mercy, and compassion are more important religious words than justice. Justice is more properly a political and legal term rather than a religious term. It becomes a religious term because we value the results of justice, fairness, equality, honesty. But those qualities, and particularly mercy, what is justice without mercy? Think of the death penalty. And your views on the death penalty are weighing justice versus mercy. Forgiveness. I preach occasionally to a little United Church of Christ in Greensboro, and I reminded them that forgiveness is the basic religious stance toward the rest of the world. And we hope that includes ourselves. The Jews, of course, believe that you begin forgiveness by forgiving yourself, and I preached on that to this congregation every year for 5 years. This building, this part of this building is the result of many people coming together for a grand purpose worthy of their efforts and their donations. It didn't seem possible when I first came to the South Hills because both the minister and the DRE had left the church after a serious conflict which could not be repaired, and both had to leave because sometimes religion doesn't even work inside the church. And so there was some tension, some anxiety, some worry, and some anger in the congregation. The meeting place was small and inadequate for modern purposes of worship, but it was cozy and friendly. And many people told me that Sunnyhill did not need a bigger building or a bigger and more active congregation. It was just this neat little community. But I didn't believe them. You see, I have faith. That's another sermon. I have faith in our liberal heritage: freedom, reason, tolerance, compassion, justice, forgiveness, and joy. So I set about to see if the practice of these values at UUCSH could not convince some folks who only wanted to be members of Sunnyhill to join the church too, to be both a part of that fun community of Sunnyhill and a part of a religious community dedicated to putting certain values into action in their own lives, the lives of the friends who gathered with them here, and the lives of the wider community. The UUA advisors for the board rationally chose to undertake a new building. And they asked the UUA for their advice, and the UUA suggested maybe they could raise a couple of $100,000. For you may remember around 2012, there was still quite a bit of recession going on. But because the members of UUCH were doing something worthy of their time, their energy, and their donations, they raised more than 5 times that amount and built this building, the additions, and began to move along. Because your vision and your faith and your love of this community was greater than your love of money. And you proved it, and we're all sitting in the proof. For as important as money is, love and faith and compassion and joy and service to others can be just as important. You, the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, were uniting for a purpose worthy of your talents, your knowledge and education, and your social conscience. Now you provide worship, joy, education to your children, and a vision to the greater South Hills community, a vision of what our Unitarian Universalist heritage offers: freedom with responsibility, compassion with hard work, forgiveness with courage, and love without false sentiment. Sunnyhill, or most of it, also became the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills. And you have to be both to be a lively, varied congregation in this city. But if you're only a community, you only take care of yourselves. But if you're a church, especially if you're a liberal church, your vision is much wider than yourself. You understand that you are part of a larger world. Our liberal heritage suggests that none of us is perfect, but all of us are capable of being better persons. There it is. That's it. So we forgive the mistakes of others as well as our own mistakes, in the hope that others will forgive us and grant us mercy and compassion that we require in order to continue on in our complicated and sometimes contradictory lives. Forgiveness, mercy, compassion all limit the role of justice and perfection. This religious insight comes directly from the great spiritual sense of humility. The universe is larger than we can know, larger than we can control, but in our liberal heritage, we are a part of that larger whole and a positive, influential, and supportive part of that larger whole. It is why our message to those people who believed we were sinners in the hands of an angry God was William Ellery Channing's alternative, that God loves us as his children, and we are all children of one human family. It caused him in the 1840s to oppose slavery and to include in his congregation those folks who fought with great courage in the 40s and 50s in the city of Boston, which was heavily invested in the slave trade, to oppose slavery. And members of his church fought in the Civil War not to protect themselves, not to gain wealth and power for themselves, but to grant to others the freedom they wanted for themselves. For our country was imperfect. Our society was imperfect. And any of us who look around today will notice that it's not nearly so imperfect as it was 150 years ago. There are no slaves. A few in prison are still called slaves, and there's a lot of work to be done there. Racism, as difficult as it is not as bad as slavery. We've come a long way, and all it does is make us aware of how much further we have to go. And we turn to one another and we say, will you forgive me for my inability to change the world to make it perfect today? And I will forgive you your unwillingness to do the same. For we are saved by forgiving one another to do the work left to be done. Today we give thanks for our imperfections, blessings opening us to new possibilities, new opportunities for love and mercy and hope and affection and joy. Embrace this life, even as we human beings are part of a fantastic physical universe and a mental universe we have created and shared among ourselves that includes our morality and our greater love. I invite you to enter into the spirit of recognizing our imperfections as opportunities for progress and improvement. Good morning. We have a closing hymn, and that closing hymn is written here somewhere. It's probably going, are we going to do that now? We are. Good. Blue Boat Home. Eileen, I got them to do Blue Boat Home. It's 1064 in your book, but it's going to be up here on the wall. Next week, we'll have a campaign to buy 150-inch screens to go on the wall, so those of you who are as old as I am can see. And we're going to put one in the back, right over the exit sign, so the poor guy who's standing, or the poor woman who's standing here, will know what the heck is going on. Because let's stand and sing together. It's a great song.
Still I try
It is time for our morning offering. We don't have a designated offering except for the screens, J1s. So our collection will benefit Sunnyhill and help defray our operating expenses. If you'd like to make a gift via our online giving system, you can do so by going to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says online giving and just follow the instructions. Or, now you're allowed to bring your cell phones back out, you can text at 412-324-3130. Text the amount of your gift and the word pledge if you want to make a payment to apply to your 2022 Sunnyhill pledge. Otherwise, text gifts will go toward our general operating fund. And of course, you can always mail a check. The mailing address is at the bottom of the website, sunnyhill.org. And for those of you who are here in person, our wonderful ushers will bring around the baskets.
There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't feel the flowing of the time when I'm gone. Oh, the pleasures of love will not be mine when I'm gone. My pen won't pour a lyric line when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone. I can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Knowing I won't be running from the rain when I'm gone. Can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Nothing I can lose or I can gain when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone. Oh, the evenings and mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. No, my days won't be dances of delight when I'm gone. And the sands will be shifting from my sight when I'm gone. Can add my name into the fight when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Knowing I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone. Can't question how or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it. Guess I'll just have to do it Oh, I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
I don't know about you, but I'm really kind of bummed to extinguish the chalice right now. This has been a lovely time together. Oh, there we go. Together, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Well, you've learned a great lesson this morning. Your music director is flexible, an absolute requirement for music directors in the Unitarian Universalist congregation. It's a little rearrangement of the music in the order of service, and it was done smoothly and very well, and a great Phil Oak song. Great, thanks for bringing that to everybody. I invite you to go now at peace with yourselves and in love with your neighbor, for tomorrow is the day we have to be ourselves. Good morning.